Hello, class ninth. A very good morning to all of you. So, class ninth, as you all know, that we are doing the second chapter of history, which is socialism in Europe and Russian Revolution. And in today's session, we are going to discuss the February Revolution in Petrograd. What happened in Petrograd and why it is called the February Revolution, we are going to discuss in today's session. So now let's begin with the session. So class, it was the time of the winters in the year 1917 when the condition of the capital Petrograd was really bad. So we all know during winters the condition of Petrograd capital was very bad during the year 1917. Now the class city was divided into two parts. On the right hand side of the river lived the fashionable areas of rich people. There was Winter Palace and official buildings were also there. Furthermore, class, you can see palaces where the Duma used to meet. So on the right hand side, fashionable lifestyle was there. Rich people used to live, big industrialists used to live. And on the left side of the river Neva, you can see the workers' quarter where the workers used to live, and they used to live in a very bad and pathetic condition. They don't have proper health facilities nor proper sanitation. So you can see the city was divided into two parts. One hand you can see a proper happy going lifestyle, fashionable lifestyle, and on the another hand you can see the poverty of the country. Furthermore, class, in February 1970, food shortage was there. So in February you can see that shortage of food was there, which impacted the workers' quarter. So because workers were poor people and they are not able to afford the essential goods, so they impacted the workers' quarters. And the winter was very cold. Frost was there, heavy snow was there. So for workers it became really difficult to survive because they can't afford the essential food items also. Now furthermore, class, the parliamentary wishing to preserve elected government. What happened? Duma was elected, and those who elected, they wanted to be there. They don't wanted Duma should be dissolved. But our Tsar Nucleus desired to dissolve the Duma. He does not want to have Duma because he wanted to have the entire power, and no one should restrict his power nor the reduction of power. So that was the reason he wanted to desire the Duma. He wanted to dissolve the Duma. Now on 22nd February, a lockout took place at the factory on the right bank. Now on what happened on 22nd February, a lockout. The entire factories got lockout, and we know that the factories were on the right hand side. And the next day, workers in 50 factories called strike in sympathy. Now next day, that is on 23rd February, the workers, all the workers in the 50 factories, they called a strike because of sympathy, because the working conditions were not really good, and this was one of the reason they called the strike in sympathy. In many factories, women led the way to strikes. So this time the strike was led by the women. The women came and they started raising the voice, and they believed in doing the strike, and thus this came to be called the International Women's Day. So this we called International Women's Day because the women were doing the strike for the first time. Okay, now demonstrating workers crossed from the factory quarters to the center of the capital. So now the workers, the group of workers, or you can say union or demonstrating workers, they cross the factory quarters to the center of the capital. So they went to the center of the capital. Now the Nevishek Provision. At this stage, no political party was active actively organizing this movement. So this movement was not being organized by any political parties. Okay, so the strike was not organized by any political party, and as the fashionable quarters and official buildings were surrounded by the workers, the government imposed a curfew. Now, class, so many people joined this demonstrating. So, what happened? The fashionable quarters and the palace was surrounded by lots and lots of people, men and women both. So, the government, in order to secure themselves, they organized or they imposed a curfew that no one will be there and all those who are protesting should go back. Now, within the evening, all the demonstrators dispersed by the evening. So, by the evening, when there was the curfew, all the people who were demonstrating, who was raising their voice, slogans, they all dispersed, they went away, but they came back on 24th February and 25th February. For that, the government called out the cavalry and police to keep an eye on them. So now they came back again on 24th February and as well as on 25th February. So the government, in order to secure a proper safety for them, they called out cavalry is a form of a military and police to keep an eye on them, to keep a check on them what activities they are doing. Now on 25th February, the government suspended the Duma. So finally the Tsar Nicholas suspended the Duma, which he was desiring to do it from a very long time. Politicians spoke out against the measure. So obviously, class, the politicians who were the elective consultatives, they were against this. They were not happy that the Duma was being suspended and they decided to do something for it. Now, class, the demonstrators, the people who were making slogans, raising their voices, returned in force to the street or the left bank on the 26th. So now they came back again on, but this time on the left bank, and on 26th, on 27th, the police headquarters was ransacked. So it was on 27th February that they ransacked, they attacked the police headquarters. The street thronged with people raising slogans about bread, wages, better hours and democracy. So now in the streets, the people were raising the slogans of bread, wages, better hours and democracy. So they wanted a democracy, they wanted proper food, proper wages and good amount of working hours and proper conditions. So this was the slogans they were raising so that they can live a proper and healthy life. But the government tried to control the situation. The government tried to control the situation many times, but they failed. They called out cavalry again, but however, it was not possible. It failed, and the cavalry refused to fire on the demonstrators. So this time, the cavalry was not in the favor to help the government, and they refused to fire the demonstrators or the people who were raising the slogan. Furthermore, class, an officer was shot at the barracks of a regiment, and 3 other regiments muted, voting to join the striking workers. Now what happened, class? Officers were shot and other officers decided to join the striking workers. They wanted to join the striking workers because they felt the the demand of the workers was justified. Okay. Now, by that evening, means by the evening of 27th February, the soldiers and the striking workers had gathered to form a Soviet, or you can say council, in the same building as the Duma met. So now by the evening, the soldiers and the workers, the striking workers as well as the soldiers had gathered to form a Soviet, or you can say a council, in the same building where the Duma used to meet, and this was the Petrograd Soviet. So you can say this was called the Petrograd Council. Furthermore, class, the very next day, a delegation went to see the Tsar military commanders, advised him to abdicate. Now, what happened, class? The very next day, that is on 28th February, one person went to see the Tsar Nicholas. So, and advised him to abdicate, in the sense to bow down or to agree. He followed their advice and abdicate. On 2nd March, Soviet leaders and Duma leaders formed a provisional government to run the country. So now, class, finally the Soviet leaders as well as the leaders that were elected in Duma, they formed a provisional government to run the country, because the Tsar Nuclear wasn't there, he ran away, and now somebody has to run the country. So it was done by the Soviet leaders and Duma leaders to form a provisional government, so that the country can be run, the economy can be seen, the problems of the people can be solved. So now Russia's future would be decided by Constituent Assembly. So now everybody wanted to have a proper Constituent Assembly, and they will decide the future of Russia. And the Constituent Assembly was made up of elected members by the universal adult suffrage. So now the Constituent Assembly was formed, and it was made by giving people universal adult suffrage. Furthermore, class, Petrograd had led the February Revolution, the brought down of monarchy in February 1917. So you can see that in Petrograd, monarchy was down, and you can see democracy was established since Tsar Nicholas ran away, and there is a formation of provisional government, and it is chosen by the people through universal suffrage. So you can see that in Petrograd, monarchy was down, and we can see establishment of democracy. Now, class, what happened after February? So we have seen in 1917 how the monarchy got down in Petrograd in 1970. Now we are going to discuss what happened after February 1917. So class, army officials, landowners and industrialists were influential in the provisional government. So many of the army officers, big landowners and industrialists, they all influenced the provisional government. But the liberals as well as the socialists among them worked towards an elected government, but it was with the hard work of liberals as well as the socialists that they worked towards the elected government, and restrictions on the public meetings and associations were removed. Earlier we got to know that there was the restrictions on public meetings of political parties, and many were considered as illegal. Now these restrictions were removed and meeting is possible. Furthermore, class, Soviet like the Petrograd Soviet was set up everywhere, though no common system of election was followed. So we have seen in Petrograd councils were there. So similarly the councils were followed, or they were made throughout the country, but there were no common election systems. They were made but without any common election system. They all have a different way of choosing the leaders. Now, in April 1970, the Bolshevik leader Vladimir Lenin returned to Russia from his exile. So class, we know that it was Vladimir Lenin who was exiled, and in April 1917 he came back to his country. He and the Bolshevik had opposed the war since 1914. He was the leader of the Bolshevik, and all the members of the Bolshevik were not in the favor of the war. They always had opposed the war, and it was since 1914. Now he felt it was time for the Soviets to take over power. Now he feels that the Soviets should take over the power. He declared that the war be brought to close. Now he wanted that the war should brought close because war was not achieving anything. Soldiers were demotivated. So he wanted that the war should brought down. Furthermore, class, he had some other demands also, like the land should be transferred to the peasants as well as the banks be nationalized. And these three demands were called as Lenin April thesis. These three demands, like bank nationalized, war should be closed, and the land should be transferred, were called as Lenin thesis. And now he also argued that Bolshevik party should rename itself the Communist Party. So he wanted to change the name of his party as the Communist Party to indicate its new radical aims, to show their new aims. Most of the members in the Bolshevik were initially surprised by the April thesis. They were very shocked because they were not aware of this. They thought that the time was not yet ripe for a socialist revolution. They felt it is not the right time for the socialist revolution, and the provisional government needed to support. They wanted to support the provisional government, but the development of the subsequent months changed their attitude. But somehow, because of the development, this attitude was changed. Through the summers, the workers' movement spread in industrial area, factories, communities were formed which began questioning the way industrialists ran their factories. So now, class, the movement was spread, and you can see a community was set up which questioned the industrialists how they ran their factories. Trade union grew in number. Lots of trade union was grown. Soldiers communities was formed in the army, and in June about 500 Soviets sent representations to the All Russian Congress of Soviet. So class, in June you can say that about 500 Soviet representatives to the sent their representatives to All Russian Congress of Soviet. As the provincial government saw its power reduced, now you can say that the provincial government powers was reducing day by day, and the Bolshevik influence was growing. So it decided to take a stern measures against the spreading discontent. So now you can see that provincial government powers was decreasing and Bolshevik influence was increasing. So the provincial government decided to do something for the power to improve for them. So what happened, class? They resisted attempts by the workers to run factories and began arresting leaders. Now they decided to arrest the leaders. Popular demonstrations staged by the Bolshevik in July were sternly repressed. Now whatever the demonstrations done by the Bolshevik in July 19 was repressed. Many Bolshevik leaders had to go on hiding. So because of provisional government decrease in power, they took many steps, and because of this, many Bolshevik leaders had to hide their face or flee away. And now talking about the countryside, peasants and their socialist revolutionary leaders pressed for redistribution of land. So in the countryside, you can say the socialists as well as the revolutionary leaders, they went for a redistribution of land, and land communities were formed to handle this. Proper distribution of land should be there, and for that a community was formed. Encouraged by the socialist revolutionaries, peasants seized land between July and September. So they were so much influenced by the socialist revolutionaries that they seized the land between July and September in 1917. So class, this was the condition of Russia after February Revolution in 1970. Although people are trying their best to improve the condition, but you can see the condition was not that good, nor it was that bad. So class, please make sure to read the chapter, to read till the February Revolution, and submit the work on time. Thank you.